You're looking for a mixer that won't give you a headache when you set it up, that you can actually trust night after night, and that feels like a solid investment instead of just a stack of features you'll never use. That's a real dilemma for anyone who's ever tried to juggle a live gig, a church service, or a band rehearsal, and ended up fighting with the console more than focusing on the sound. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started researching digital consoles for a medium-sized venue, the biggest red flag was the feature list, a wall of numbers that sounded impressive until you imagined yourself actually using them in a cramped rack. The StudioLive Series 332 SC keeps the conversation grounded because it's built around three practical questions. How quickly can I get sound on the floor? How easy is it to recall the mix I spent hours dialing in? And what happens if I need a backup recording or a quick virtual sound check? Those are the moments that separate a console that lives in a brochure from one that lives in a real-world workflow. Let's walk through a typical night at a community theater that recently upgraded from an analog board to the 32SC. The rig is a standard 19-inch rack, and the 32SC slides right in, taking up just a fraction of the space that a comparable analog desk would need. Because it's rack-mountable, the unit stays out of the way of stage hands, and the front panel is angled just enough to read the channel strips without crouching. The first thing the crew notices is the fully recallable nature of the console. After they set up their first show, they save the entire scene, all fader positions, EQ moves, and FX assignments, with a single button press. The next night they load that scene, and every channel is exactly where it was the night before. No more retyping patch numbers or hunting for the right subgroup. The console remembers for you. That kind of recall is a game changer for venues that run a rotating schedule of bands, speakers, and choirs. You can have a rock show scene, a spoken word scene, and a worship scene all saved on the same board and flip between them in seconds. It eliminates the guesswork that often leads to a noisy front of house or a muddy monitor mix. In practice, that means you spend more time listening to the performance and less time adjusting knobs in the dark. One of the less obvious, but hugely practical features is the built-in AVB networking. If you've ever tried to run a long snake from the stage to the FH rack, you know how quickly cable costs and signal loss add up. With AVB, the 32SC can talk directly to PreSonus NSB stage boxes over a single Ethernet cable, delivering 48V phantom power and pristine audio to every input. For a touring band that moves from venue to venue, that reduces setup time dramatically. You just plug the Ethernet cable in, and you've got a full-featured I/O network without a jungle of analog snakes. Now, let's talk about the USB interface. The mixer offers a 128-channel, 64 inches/64 out, USB bridge, the biggest I've seen in this price range. In a live recording scenario, that means you can pull every channel straight into a DAW on your laptop without needing an external audio interface. A guitarist can record a clean direct signal while the vocalist's mic goes through the board's compressor, and the whole multi-track session is ready for post-production later that night. It's the kind of flexibility that turns a simple gig into a content creation opportunity, especially for indie artists who want to capture high-quality stems without renting a studio. Speaking of multi-track, the Onboard S-Card recorder adds a layer of safety you rarely find in digital consoles. Imagine you've just finished a live stream, and the internet drops right before the final song. The 32SC continues to write each channel to the SD card, so you still end up with a full multitrack file to edit later. And because it supports PreSonus Virtual Soundcheck, you can rehearse a mix without the band being on stage. The board replays the recorded tracks through the monitor outputs, letting the engineer fine-tune levels and effects while the musicians sit in the control room. For venues that can't afford a separate rehearsal space, that feature alone can save hours of wasted time. Flex mixes are another spot where the 32SC shows its practical side. The console gives you 16 flexible buses that you can assign as AUX mixes, subgroups, or matrix mixes on the fly. In a worship service, you might use 4 of those for front of house, monitor, recording, and a live stream feed, while the remaining 12 handle zone mixes for different parts of the sanctuary. The ability to repurpose the same bus for different routing tasks means you're not locked into a rigid signal path, and you can adapt the mix as the program changes. Of course, no piece of gear is perfect, and the 32SC has a few trade-offs that matter once you bring it into a real-world environment. First, the channel count caps at 32.